Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode. A couple of days ago, me and my friend Ryan went to the amazingly beautiful Zillertal here in Austria. As my upcoming film is about rock climbing, Zillertal was an obvious place to go to for some references. It really is a mecca for climbers. Both me and Ryan brought our cameras to document the area. You should definitely check out Ryan's work, and I will link his Instagram here. I try to shoot a variety of different types of nature I will need in the film. I will still need to go out for more location and reference hunting, but this was a super productive day where I managed to capture both close-ups of rivers and rocky landscapes to vast overlooking views of the mountain scenery. When I later paint backgrounds, it's super useful to have all this footage available to scrub through and find perfect references for what I should paint. Everything from different types of rocks to trees and bushes, and how the moss grows around the stones, to how a river flows and how the light falls onto the peaks of the mountains. For this episode, I will show you how I created a potential opening shot for my animated film. I wanted to explore how I could generate a vast forest without having to paint the trees individually. I wanted to keep it quite high res and with a lot of details, so I started off by painting a few tree assets that had the right amount of details to be spread across a big landscape. I think it's important to find the balance of how much shading and details you add to these trees. The two trees on the right here have a bit too much shading going on, and I think if they were duplicated hundreds of times, it would look a bit too busy. I think the shapes of the trees are the most important factor, generating a variety of different types of pine trees in my case to avoid too much repetition. In Cinema 4D, I created my scene by placing out a bunch of landscape objects. I then used a cloner object to scatter them over this landscape. This is a very similar technique to what I used for the grass in one of my previous videos where I was painting a big boulder. It works for all sort of painted assets that you need a large amount of. I made sure that the trees did not cast too many shadows, as I found that to look a bit too 3D and less painterly. Rendering that off, I could start painting in the landscape around it. Here are some of the layers I painted. I made sure to keep the painting on quite a few different layers so I could separate foreground and background elements later, as I wanted to add a bit of camera movement to the shot. Here's a clever way that I figured out that helps me to quickly paint mountains. I draw a solid shape of the mountain first, making sure it has all the right details. You could use some reference for this or just eyeball it. Then on another layer set as a clipping mask to my mountain shape, I paint using this mountain brush that I made. If I now select a slightly darker color and having my brush size quite large, I can just click in a few different spots and it does the trick. When creating this brush, I made sure to have these cracks in it that once applied to the mountain shape, it looks like formations of rock. I then battled back and forth with dark and bright to get the right look. It takes a few tries normally, but it gives some quite interesting results. I wanted some foreground elements in there, so I went back into Cinema 4D and modeled these rocks. I dropped on a texture I painted that gave them some brush strokes and a little bit of rock definition. After rendering that, I added a lot of details in Photoshop through painting. Since this is the element that is closest to the camera, I intend to make it quite detailed and polished. Here, my reference shot in Zillertal really came in handy. I had my footage close at hand when painting the cracks in the stones and the vegetation that grows on the rocks. Bringing that back into 3D, I projected the detailed painting back onto the rocks, and that way I could now move the camera over them. I did a similar trick in one of my latest episodes on camera mapping. I will link that here. Finally, I painted some closer pine trees that could dress the bottom of the frame and add parallax as the camera moved into the shot. The composite was done in After Effects, where I set my Photoshop layers as 3D layers and matched the camera movement I had from my 3D stone scene. I animated some small mosquitoes in the foreground and added some grain to the final shot. Hope you enjoyed this episode. Just a quick announcement, I am now on Patreon, so if you'd like to support the channel, you can head over there and have a look. I intend to keep these videos free for everyone to watch, but as it takes a lot of work to make them, I thought I would give those who want the opportunity to support it. Like and subscribe here on YouTube, and I will see you soon. Bye.